Hey everybody, Dave here. I hope you're having an awesome day. So, I have this 20-inch Captain Phasma, and she's pretty cool, but the plastic is just not quite right. The silver's a little off. And then I have this Design Master Super Silver spray paint. I actually found this at a yard sale for like 50 cents, and it has been the most amazing silver spray paint I've ever used. So, I'm going to try and do a little modification on her. She's a little stiff. So I think I might get out the heat gun and try some more bending and posing. So come on, let's do it. Okay, here she is. The gray plastic, it does have a little bit of metallic in the plastic, but it's kind of wimpy. So I think maybe some silver spray paint. This should be a pretty simple, straightforward, no problems project. So I gotta get the head off, unscrew the back here, and once I get this unscrewed, I realized there's a couple of screws under the belt, so I gotta try and get this off. And I was trying to pry at it with the screwdriver, but it is glued on there pretty good. So I got the heat gun out, and I'm just gonna hit this and hopefully loosen up some of that glue. I did put a towel down because I didn't want to scratch this up, but this still wasn't coming, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to glue this back on. So I went ahead and cut the piece that was holding it together, and then it popped right out. Okay, so we got the back off there. There's those two screw holes. And I was thinking maybe I didn't have to take this all the way off, but I figured it's going to be easier just to take it all the way off for painting purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and take the heat gun, again, soften that glue up just a little bit, and there it goes, pops right out. That'll make it a lot easier for painting. Okay, now the head is actually preventing the whole body from coming apart, so I've got to get this head off, then the body will come apart. So I'm going to just take some boiling hot water. I just took a hair tie and just put the cape against the leg just so the cape didn't get soaking wet. But I'll soak this in for a couple minutes, and then that head should just pop right off. Yeah, that just softens the plastic, and it just comes right out. So great, that's perfect. Now the body should just come apart. Cool, that works. So here's the parts, and this will make it easier to paint and put it all back together. So now with the gun, I don't love the way it's sitting in his hand. It's just kind of weird. So I'm going to try and heat up the hand, and this will soften the plastic a little bit, and then the knife should just cut right through that. So that looks pretty good, and it's working pretty easy. So I'm going to kind of just shape this and kind of put it back on the gun to see how it's looking. And I think there's too much material because the finger's kind of sitting weird. So I'm going to trim down some of the hand. I actually trimmed down some of the gun a little bit as well with the Dremel. And I think this is going to help it look a little bit better and fit the rifle. So I'm going to have the finger in a safety position. So her finger is going to just be laying across the trigger guard there. I was trying to heat up and bend the arm, and I melted the shoulder here. So I'm going to have to sand that out and fix it. And the heat gun, it worked great on my last project, the Halo project. My goal was to just heat this up, and I'm actually just heating it up right now, and then just bend it. And with the Halo project, no problems at all. This one, oh boy, it was kind of a disaster. It bent weird, and it was just not working. It crumpled the plastic. This plastic was really hard too. The Halo one went really easy. So that being said, the heat gun's not going to work, so I just took the Dremel and cut the arms in half. And I've actually seen a couple of other makers. Cosplay Chris is kind of the first person I saw do this, and so I'm just going to cut the arms here and kind of align it to fit the angle that I want. Now this was a lot of trial and error, kind of just trimming just little pieces, aligning it back up, trimming little pieces again, aligning it back up, and getting it just where I want it. I want her to be able to hold the rifle across her body, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. So I'm gonna do a quick little measurement. I think this is about where I want it to be, but I need to cut this arm off in order to get the two together to find out exactly where it's to be. So I'm going to get my Dremel and cut off that arm. Now I can kind of, I'm just holding these. They're not glued on yet, but I'm trying to find about the position I want. I'm liking the feel of this. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Okay, so now I'm going to take my BSI Instacure Plus glue and just glue this arm into place. Now, there's not a ton of surface area, so I'm going to use this almost to kind of tack it in, and then I'd put some just flower wire and a ton of hot glue here. So this should help me support that arm. I glued on the other arm here, and then I am just filling this with a ton of hot glue, and this should hold it all together and make it really sturdy. So I think this is going to work. Yeah, that's looking really nice. I really love this pose. This is not the prettiest. It's actually kind of ugly, but we'll get some Magic Sculpt in there and fill that out in a minute. I am just putting some glue along these seams, and then I'm going to take some baking soda and just put it on there. I'm trying to build this up so I can sand all this down. So I'm going to do a ton of sanding with different grits to try and get this as smooth as possible. So we'll see how this turns out. While I have to do some sanding, I'm going to go ahead and get the Magic Sculpt going here. And it's just a 2-part epoxy. Mix that stuff up. And then I'm going to fill these holes here because I'm going to have to do a bunch of sanding anyway. So I might as well get this done. So this 2-part epoxy hardens without having to cook it in the oven. So I'll just put a little bit in there. And again, I'm just rolling a little snake of it and just filling those holes. So that should work. Okay, now while I have the Magic Sculpt out, I went ahead and just made another little ball of it. I'm just filling this elbow hole as much as I can, kind of cramming it in there. Once I got that all crammed in and how I want it, I just took a little sculpting tool and just carefully sculpted some of those little folds, and I don't know, it looks pretty cool. I think it's going to work. Okay, so whenever you have extra Magic Sculpt, you have to do something cool with it. You can't just throw it away. So I made this little skull guy, and I actually painted him up off camera. So if you think I should give this away, let me know in the comments below. I've never done a giveaway, so let me know. Okay, so I could have filled this video with hours and hours of sanding, so I'm only going to give you the pleasure of seeing just a small snippet of all the work that I did. Hopefully it's worth it. I got done with sanding, and I sanded it with 1200 grit wet sand, and I thought it was looking pretty good. So I went ahead and sprayed it silver, and it just showed every single flaw. It looked horrible. So I ended up getting some 2000 grit sandpaper and some 3000 grit sandpaper, and that worked a little bit better. But I really tried all kinds of stuff to get these seam lines not to show. I used this Tamiya putty. It worked okay, but it wasn't as perfect as I wanted it to be. So here I am using some cheap black acrylic paint, and boy, that is not a good way to go. You can see here it is just not covering. It took me a lot of coats, but I did finally get it to work. After it would dry, it would hold a coat a little bit better. So I got a little piece there I gotta fix, but then I did a clear coat over it, and it looks pretty nice. This is just some stuff I found at a yard sale, so I can't recommend it necessarily, but it worked okay. But I thought, man, I really want it to be more of a super bright silver, and had this AK True Metallic, and I've used this in the past, and you brush it on, and then after it dries a little bit, you can buff it, and it actually gives a pretty cool sheen. So I thought, this might be kind of cool. So I brushed it on, and I started kind of buffing that out. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I liked how it changed the tone of it a little bit, but I still want that sheen and luster, and this is kind of where it went downhill for me. Like, I was buffing the top, and it just started peeling off the, like, I don't know what happened. Paint started coming off, and this was kind of the turning point for this project. It really went downhill from here. I had a lot of struggles with this. I thought, okay, maybe I can buff out just this area. So I got this little buffing wheel. I've never used it before on my Dremel, and I don't know what happened, but it actually is so powerful. It actually marred the helmet. It drilled a gouge into the helmet. I was like, are you kidding me? I ended up having to hand sand all of that out. So don't use that little buffing wheel. This is clearly not working, so I'm going to take some nail polish remover and I'm just going to take all the paint off and we'll start over and let's just try it again. Alright, so here's the legs. A ton of sanding. I think they look pretty good. The end result, you can see a little bit of the seam line, but I'm going to be good with this. Here's the body. I did a light sanding on this just so the paint would stick and hold to it a little bit better. So this is kind of a before shot. And then here's the silver after. If there's a cool chrome out there, let me know in the comments because I would love to find a really good chrome. So I picked up this black paint at a gaming and hobby store. And you can see it covers a million times better, so don't cheap out. And okay, this here, I'm being really sloppy, and I know you'll probably be like, yikes, Dave, that looks horrible, but hang tight. I apologize, I'm dropping out of screen here a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm just putting this on carelessly, but then I'm going to take my finger and do a quick wipe across the surface, and then the paint that's in the grooves, ta-da! Alright, remember that stuff that gave me problems before? I'm going to give it one more chance, and I'm just kind of dabbing this on here, and it does give some depth to the helmet, so I think that's going to work out pretty nice. Alright, I'm just about done here. I'm going to paint up this gun, and let's call this one finished.
Okay, so that build was a lot more of a pain in the neck than I thought it was going to be, and in the end, I'm not sure that it's like spectacular wow. I think it's a little bit cooler, but it wasn't really what I envisioned it. I thought it was going to be like this really cool transformation, but the silver spray paint, once I put a gloss over it, kind of died a little bit, and there was just some things that weren't like. I put a lot of work into the sanding, and then I feel like some of the seams still showed a little bit, and it wasn't like perfect, and that's probably just me being like OCD with it. But in the end, it was. I learned from it, and that's the important thing. There was a bunch of times I thought I'm just gonna quit on this and just trash it, and there are projects that sometimes you just have to trash them and start over. But I think this ended up being a project that I was like, no, I'm so close. I just need to push through it and finish it, and I don't know. You be the judge. Let's take some turnaround shots of this, and as always, even when it's hard, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Have a great one.